Have you ever considered having a Caribbean passport as your second option? Perhaps a passport that you can obtain pretty quickly and with no minimum significant presence requirement. And not that many hassle either. If this resonates with you, then stay tuned, because that's what we're going to talk about today. The Dominican Republic is not often talked about enough, and this has to change. In recent years, the Dominican Republic has opened up more and more to foreign investors and people who want to establish themselves in the country. There are several ways to do this, and today we're going to discuss the most expedite ways where you can obtain a Dominican Republic passport. My name is Natalia Rincon, and I'm a Research and Development Associate at Nomad Capitalist. We specialize in emerging markets, in providing you with options where you can relocate, invest, save on taxes, and even bank. There's been an increasing interest in the Dominican Republic. This is because they're very open to foreigners, and you can actually obtain their passport with not that many requirements. The Dominican passport is not the best in terms of visa-free access to countries, but still, you can go visa-free to countries such as Russia, Brazil, Hong Kong, Malaysia, and Singapore. So if these are regions where you do business, then there's also further advantages to obtaining your Dominican Republic passport other than profitable investments and a nice Caribbean weather when you can go whenever you feel like it. Also, if, for example, your original passport doesn't provide access to these countries, then the Dominican Republic becomes more and more attractive to you as an option for a second passport. But how can you actually get residence in the Dominican Republic? Well, there are several ways. There's temporary residence and permanent residence. Here, we always recommend the permanent residence just because the temporary doesn't really give you a residence card. But if you go through this option, you just basically need to do some sort of business, management activity, or be employed within the Dominican Republic. This residence would be valid for 1 year and then you can renew it. But in order to discuss the options that would actually be attractive to you, then we need to take a look into permanent residence. Now, as I mentioned, there are several ways in which you can obtain this. The most basic ones are the Rentista and the Pensioner. With the Rentista option, you just need to prove that you receive a steady income of at least $2,000, whereas with the Pensioner option, this income can be reduced to $1,500. Now, if you're gonna add dependents, each of your dependents adds to that amount $250. So depending on how big or small your family is, then you need to consider raising or lowering that amount. So what is the real difference between a Rentista and a Pensioner? Some countries require a minimum age to qualify as a pensioner. But in the case of the Dominican Republic, it's more about where this income is coming from. For example, if you're a Rentista, you most likely receive passive income either from rents, dividends, or royalties. But what exactly is a Rentista? I know this isn't really an English term, but basically what it means is a person that receives passive income, whether this comes from a rent or from an investment. Overall, it basically means just proving that you have foreign-sourced income that has been steadily received for the past 5 years. And this way you can apply as a Rentista. On the other hand, in order to apply as a pensioner, as I mentioned before, there is no minimum age requirement. However, you need to show that this income that you are receiving of $1,500 comes either from the company where you worked or from a government body that issues the pension and that you receive under your own name. There's also a path to acquire permanent residence by holding the temporary residence that I mentioned at the start of this video for 5 complete years. But the option that I want to delve more deep into today is the investment option. So the way it works now is that any foreign investor who invests an amount of at least $200,000 into the Dominican Republic economy can qualify as a foreign investor for a permanent residence. Now you may wonder, what can I invest in? Well, there are several investments that you can consider making. For example, you can go for the real estate option. Real estate in the Dominican Republic can potentially bring you profit. However, you need to take into consideration that the only real estate projects that you can invest in are those approved by the Comfotour initiative. And these are usually projects that are more oriented towards tourism initiatives. But as you may probably know, tourism is a big part of the economic industry within the Dominican Republic. Therefore, this could likely become into a profitable investment to you that also will give you an immigration route. If maybe you're more on the corporate side and you would like to make a corporate investment, you can incorporate your own company with a minimum capital of $200,000. You can invest into an existing company, whether it is part of the free trade zone or not, or you can make a corporate investment in a company that does touristic projects, for example. One of the options that we often recommend to clients is to form a company and capitalize it with the 200,000 US dollars. And then through this company, you can invest, for example, in a bank product, in a direct deposit, in a government bond, or any other investment that interests you. If, for example, you are looking into having a subsidiary or actually conducting economic or business activities within the Dominican Republic, this is definitely an option to consider. There are some significant tax incentives that would also be applicable potentially to you if you decide to go to this route, but I'm going to dive more deep into that when I go through the tax section. However, you need to take into consideration that if you go through a corporate investment, this corporate investment needs to be certified by Pro Dominicana, which is usually a process that can prolong the application process timelines on itself, given that getting these sorts of certifications and approval may be a more time-consuming operation. The last option that you can go for is you as an individual, combine the investment route and the Rentista route for the permanent residence. And in order to do this, you would need to make a higher deposit of around 400,000 US dollars into a banking product within the Dominican Republic that can give you a fixed yield of around $2,400 per month. And this way you are both an investor and a rentista. So this last option may sound weird to some of you because it isn't really a company and it is not a foreign source income either. So who will certify this? Well, if you choose to go through this route, then it would be the Central Bank of the Dominican Republic that could issue a certificate in order to back up your investment. Now, if any of these options resonate with you, you might want to know how the process is to actually apply. Well, first, you should apply for a residence visa at the nearest consulate of embassy in the Dominican Republic from the country that you reside in. And by this point, you should submit most of the original documents already. They will ask documentation such as your ID, your passport copy, marriage certificate. But additionally, they request a medical checkup and a criminal record or a clearance certificate from the local police of the country in which you reside. Upon submitting these documents, you will be called to the embassy to do an interview and submit your biometric data in order for a residence visa to be stamped into your passport. After the residence visa is stamped, you have 60 days to enter the Dominican Republic in order to continue with the process. So if any of these options resonate with you, you may be interested in knowing how exactly the process works. Well, first of all, if you're going to go through the investment option, then you should make the investment as a foreigner. We work with in-ground professionals that can assist our clients in order to expedite and streamline any investment option that they wish to go with. Then, once the investment is made, you should submit an application at the nearest embassy or consulate from the country in which you reside. By that point, you should already have your documents pretty much ready for the most part. And they will request, of course, the normal documents that you would expect, your ID, your passport copies, marriage certificate and birth certificate, and so on. But also, they will request a police clearance certificate from your country of residence, and they will request a medical certificate or checkup that attests to the general condition of your health. Once the documents are submitted digitally, you will be called to attend an interview at the embassy or consulate in which you will submit your fingerprints and you will receive a residence visa stamped in your passport. With this residence visa, you have 60 days in order to enter the Dominican Republic and continue the process. When you enter the Dominican Republic, we always recommend to open up a bank account. Depending on how well you're connected, it will greatly vary whether you can open this bank account remotely with the power of attorney or in person. If you go basically alone or as a tourist or even with a residence visa, it could be unlikely that they will open up a bank account for you without your physical presence in it. Now, if you try to open a bank account in the Dominican Republic on your own, even after holding a residence visa and not visiting the actual branch of the bank, it is unlikely or honestly difficult that they will open the bank account for you without your physical presence. However, our in-ground professionals can help you open up this bank account remotely via power of attorney, especially if, for example, you decide to go through the business investment route. However, we always advise our clients to have a local bank account just because if their interest is to renew their residence or even apply to citizenship, the more ties that you can prove that you have to the Dominican Republic will increase your chances of a successful application. You need to be prepared to have at least 2 appointments at the immigration office. Basically, the process goes the same way in terms of submitting documentation. First, you submit the digital versions along with the questionnaires that we at Nomad Capitalist help you to fill out. We help you go through the vast majority of the documents to ensure that they're ready and well presented for the authorities to review. And once you submit all these documents, you will be asked to schedule an appointment at the Immigration Center where you will present the physical versions of these documents and go through likely an interview, a fingerprinting process, and having the Dominican Republic authorities meet you, in which you will get a chance to express the reasons behind you wanting to become a resident in the Dominican Republic. After your first appointment and the payment of the initial fees, you will have to go through a medical exam in an authorized medical facility within the Dominican Republic. And once you have your results, you go, you submit them, and then if you want, you can leave and basically wait for the approval. Now, the approval can take anywhere between maybe 60 days to 4 months, again, depending on how well presented your application is and how complete are your documents. You will experience more of a or less of a wait time overall. Finally, once you receive your approval, you would likely have to travel back to the Dominican Republic because they will want to see you in person in order to hand over your residence permit. First, they require the normal documents like birth certificate, marriage certificate, blah, 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 but they will also require some complementary or special documents such as your health check, your police certificate from your country of residence, and if you went through the investment route, the corporate documents that back up the corporate investment. If you went for a real estate investment, then the title deed of the property. If you went through the bank deposit route, then of course the certification of coming from the bank and from the central bank that backs up the investment. And if you go through the Rentista or the pensioner option, well, basically the documents that back up that constant influx of income that you have been receiving for the past years. Now let's talk about citizenship. What is necessary to apply? What are the minimum requirements? And how can you become a Dominican Republic citizen? Well, if you went through the Rentista or pensioner route, likely you will have to wait for 2 years in order to submit your citizenship request. At the time of filming this video, this is the law that is in place. However, we have special insight that this is likely to change, and the rentistas and the pensioners will also be included in the fast track option that investors have. So investors who invested at least $200,000 into the Dominican Republic economy can submit their citizenship application only after 6 months. It is required by law to have spent a significant time within the Dominican Republic, so at least 180 days or more. However, in practice, this is not too well enforced. This does not mean that we do not encourage you to establish close ties to the Dominican Republic country, but there's a little bit more flexibility when it comes to physical presence. In terms of documents, you basically need to show that your constant influx of income or your investment remains. You should also have a repatriation insurance, and this is also a document that they will request to give you residence actually. And by the time of filming this video, you need to have a local guarantor for citizenship. This guarantor needs to have a property, a car, and a bank account to back you up as an applicant. Now, the last thing that you should take into consideration is that when you apply for Dominican Republic citizenship, you will be summoned to attend an interview with the immigration authorities. We do encourage you to learn some Spanish. However, the immigration department can also provide you with a translator if that makes things easier for you. And in this interview, basically, they will again ask you for your reasons behind becoming a citizen of the Dominican Republic and some historical, cultural, and geographical questions about the country. Now, let's talk a little bit about tax. So the most attractive thing about the Dominican Republic's tax system is that it is territorial. This means that the only income that will be subjected to tax in the Dominican Republic is income generated within the Dominican Republic territory. This applies for both individuals and companies. So, any foreign source income that you receive or generate will not be included in this category and won't be subjected to tax in the Dominican Republic. Furthermore, if you are a new tax resident, a rentista, or an investor, you can get access to special benefits tax-wise. Some examples are exemption from payment of import duties on personal and household effects, so you can bring in some of your stuff into the Dominican Republic. Partial exemption from import duties on a motor vehicle. Exemption from payment on the transfer tax on the purchase of your first property in the country. Then you will also get a 50% reduction in property tax on the first property that you purchase. So as you can see, a real estate investment is highly encouraged. You will also get reduced rates on capital gains from the sale of properties, exception from payment of custom duties in home furnishings, and a permanent exemption from payment of taxes on dividends and interest received from foreign sources. So if you remit any interest or dividends into the Dominican Republic that you receive from a foreign source, this will not be subjected to tax. This also, for example, includes if you start remitting your pension or your rent into the Dominican Republic, this would also not be subjected to tax. These are just a few examples of the tax benefits that you can get. Some other benefits could depend on the industry that you decide to operate within if you go for the company route. But overall, if all the things that I have mentioned so far are of interest to you, then I highly advise that you go to our website and sign up to become our client. We can definitely help you pick the immigration, investment, and banking option that is specifically tailored for your needs. And who knows, perhaps you could be considering to move to this attractive Caribbean country. So thank you for watching, and don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and share it. Perhaps it will be of interest to somebody else. This way we can grow our Nomad Capitalist community. Stay tuned.